Hello everyone, in this tutorial we are going to model this cool looking champagne knife. So whereas last week we used 3 reference images, we're only going to have this one image that we bring into Maya as our reference. So there's some things we have to keep in mind. But even before I go into Maya, I think sometimes it's a good idea, especially for an object that's relatively simple like this. You can start thinking about the topology before you start playing with it in Maya. Sometimes that can help save you time. Now, if you're doing a really complicated object, it will be like less detailed than what I'm about to do, but you should have a general understanding of what the topology is going to be before you start modeling, I'd say. And the more you model things, you don't have to do this stage anymore. I think it's helpful for people just starting off the modeling process. So we'll just look at this as a flat image, and we'll kind of block in some possible topology. I'm not going to say we're going to follow this 100%, but it can be a good start. Okay, so let's say we have an edge here and here. And these are gonna go here. Boom. So I'm kind of thinking about like my vertex placement. So like this would be a vert, this would be a vert, this would be a vert. Here, here, and here. So then what we need to do is connect these 2 vertices. So we have these 2 big polygons here. So again, we're just gonna I'm gonna quickly do this because I've modeled this before. So I kind of know what the topology is gonna be. But this is a good process for, again, kind of blocking out what the topology might be. So obviously this is like a big polygon, so we can cut that in half, but we're not gonna do that in this stage. So now the tricky part is this blade. So a couple things to keep in mind. I know I'm going to want an edge that follows like right here and right here. That's because this surface is flat, and then we're going to angle this edge and this edge in to kind of create that blade. Okay, so let's kind of block that. I'll start right here. So maybe we have triangle here. 1, 2. And let's just go put the vertices in. So then we want to make sure this kind of lines up with these ones, right? Okay. Let's this one up. So right now we got this big end-on here. Oops. So I think what we could do, and again, it might be different in Maya, but connect there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay. And let's put the blades in. So this is 1, 2, 3. So we need one right here. And we could do 1. I don't think this can be 1 because we need to represent this curve better. But I think for now that's okay. As long as we get the overall gist. Actually, we could put the vertices in. first. So that's 4. We'll probably want to cut one here. And this will be a try, but that's okay. So hopefully you can see how we're starting to block out our edge flow. And again, this is like a super simple object, so we're actually going to model this flat first, and then kind of extrude stuff out. All right, so this is the tricky part. So I know we're eventually going to want this here, so we can just do something like this. Let's cut an edge here. So that's 4, 4, and 4. So just to put the vertices in so it makes a little bit more sense what's going on. So yeah, this is like a really rough layout, but we can kind of troubleshoot some ideas in this 2D phase before we get to the 3D stage, when we have to worry about making sure the topology is good, and also we got to focus on like the actual shape in 3D space. So this can be a good method to kind of block that out. Okay, so once we have that, we can jump into Maya. So I'm going to go to my front view, or you can use the top view. For some reason, I just like modeling flatter objects in the front view. So I'll go to my front and I'll import that image. So I'll click this icon right here, navigate to that reference, hit open, and there it is. So a couple things. Again, we can turn off the grid if it's annoying. So this is the button to toggle the grid on and off. So let's select this. Let's make a new layer, and let's call this one ref. Save. And I think we are going to go ahead and set it to R, so it's, we can't select it in the viewport, but we can always select in the outliner. And if you can't get the outliner, or if you don't see the outliner, it's this button right here. So let's go to Attribute Editor, because this is pretty light. So if it's too, and it's like a pure white back here, so sometimes that's kind of annoying. So I'll just select my image plane, go to Attribute Editor, and I will set the color gain down so it's not as intense. Okay, that's a little bit better. Let's go to this view. So I'm going to create a plane. And in perspective, I'm just going to make sure that plane is like sitting above our reference image, because right now it puts it like right on there. So sometimes it can be a little bit weird to see. So I'm going to just drag this above. And this is X-ray mode right here. Oops, that's for joints. X-ray mode. Okay. So anytime I say I'm going into X-ray mode, you would have to hit this button. I might use my hotkeys, but I'll always call out like what function I'm doing. So again, X-ray, it's right here, toggle X-ray mode. All right, so let's right click, vertex, and let's kind of line this up. So remember, when we model, don't really want to start cutting in stuff right now, because we'll need it later, but right now we can just position these and then cut in edges as needed. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Obviously, I need more edges, so I'll use my insert edge loop tool. So remember, that can be found in the modeling toolkit, or no, it can't. It's under mesh tools, insert edge loop. You can dock it, Control Shift click it in here. So Control Shift clicked, and that will dock it to your shelf. So you can see here, this is my custom shelf. Let's go to polygon modeling. So this is what probably you will have poly modeling shelf, and then you can see I added the insert edge loop tool. So I have a shortcut, but that's how you get to it. So I'll call that out. So here's insert edge loop. So now I can cut that in the middle, and now I have this kind of topology to work with. So I could bring this out too and try to shape this. Maybe you might be thinking do this, so you have more topology to work with. But really, we're adding these edges, and we don't really need them all the way out here. We just need some edges here to kind of create that roundness. So I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do is hold Shift, select these two edges, go to my Move tool, so W, and then if you hold Shift, you can actually extrude edges. So as long as you're in the Move tool, so I'm holding Shift, and then I'll drag it along this axis with my Move tool. So let's go to vertex mode, and then just push these in. So now we're getting that round shaped, and you can see we didn't cut these two polygons in half, so we're kind of keeping the overall poly count really low for this object. It's going to be a low poly object. So a couple things, this face is really long. Now if we're going like super low, yeah, that's fine, we could keep it like this. But just to make the polygons a little bit more even, I'm going to go to edge mode, select these three, and I will go to connect, and let's see what 3 looks like. Let's just do 2. There we go. Okay. So now we're building up the handle. So now from this, we can start extruding from the knife. So I'm going to kind of ignore this middle section first, and I'm going to focus on building the sharpness. So I'll just extrude this out, and we're definitely probably not going to leave this like this. And the nice thing about how I'm modeling is I start with a plane, and I'm just extruding from the plane. All we're going to do is like worry about it flat. We do have to keep that depth information in mind to have these edges land where we want them to, but I am just modeling flat, so I'm not worried about the depth right now in the sense that I need to shape it, but I am conscious that I am going to need to like do some things later on to get that depth information for this knife. Okay. So again, if you're in the Move tool, you can hold Shift and drag along the edge or the axis you want to move, and that's your Extrude tool. So now what we can do, and you can see I'm starting big. I'm cutting stuff in as needed. Oops. Let's do something like this. Okay, so here I'm starting to get this kind of the top angled part in. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to weld it to there. So we have a function called target weld. So you select the one that you want to weld, or you want to move, and then select the one you want to move it to. So I'm just clicking, holding, dragging it to that vertex, and it just welds that into one. Oops, target weld. Okay. So I don't like... we'll clean that up in a second. So shift, drag, and right here. So we're gonna weld these two. So if you want to weld to the center, you can use, oh, it's not up here. Merge. And if they're close enough, they'll merge. If they're too far, you might have to increase the threshold. Let's bring this right here. So we'll probably end up with two tries, but that's okay. So we can just delete and delete. So now I'm going to go in and really start making sure stuff's lining up a bit better. So obviously this is kind of too straight. So let's just use our insert edge loop tool. So I don't like how close this is. So let's kind of do some cleanup here. I think we can just have this come off here. So let's do target weld. I mean, we could keep it a try. It's not terrible, but I'm gonna make, let's do this instead. So I'm gonna use my multi-cut tool. Click and click. Okay, and then delete this edge, control backspace. And I think that should be fine. I think I want like one more edge like right here though. And then I'll space it. Yeah, I think that's gonna look a little bit better. And then I can take this one and space it out a little bit more. And this one can come like more right here. There we go. Try to get them somewhat evenly spaced or close. All right, so now that's looking good. Okay, let's use our insert edge loop. Let's cut one right here. Make sure it's lining up. And let's start worrying about this one. So now this, I'm actually just going to delete this face, and I'm going to have to do some Frankensteining to kind of get this. And the nice thing about working off of a plane is we can like do a lot of experimenting with our edge flow because we know we're on this flat surface. So we won't have to correct anything. All right, so this is going to kind of finish up this blade. So hopefully by now you guys can see like I have this nice edge flow. Oops. Right here. So that's going to be the part that angles in. This is going to be the top part that angles in. And then all these ones are going to be the flat surface. And then we have the handle. So this is laying the foundation, and it's going to make it super easy to extrude my depth information. So target weld, remember that's right here. And I think eventually this is going to come to this. So let's bridge, excuse me, let's bridge right here. And let's extrude this one out. Okay. And let's extrude this one out. So now what I'm trying to do, maybe we delete this one, is I know I want I'm just getting like a lonely face. Oops. Because I know I want this to kind of be one polygon thick, and then we'll probably cut it in half. But I know I'm gonna eventually want something like this. So right now, I'm just like troubleshooting right here to see how I can get this topology to flow nicely into this one. So I do know I'll cut this in half, and I think let's do target weld. Go on here and here. Let's target weld. So I think this should be okay. So let's target weld. Just spacing these out. Then I think ideally might be able to get away with something like this. Yeah, okay. So now the issue is we have basically 1, 2, 3 faces and only one on this side, so we can't just like bridge across. Let's shift drag up. So now we can bridge this one to this one. And we can bridge here. And we could leave a try there. That's actually probably okay. It's on a flat surface. So I actually am gonna just leave that a try right here. And then I'm just going in, making sure the silhouette is gonna be nice. That's pretty good. Okay, so let's bridge this one. So if I go to edge mode, there should be a function called cap if bridge doesn't work. But bridge works. Okay, so I can toggle x-ray mode and just see what I have. Yeah, that actually looks good. So now let's focus on the fluke thing going on. So I'm just extruding out and rotating and moving. Okay, go into the vertex mode, start shaping things up. I think this is overall too thick. Kind of gets thin at the bottom. Yeah, that's not too bad. Okay, so now we have the foundation of our knife. Okay, so a couple things. We can start like extruding to get the handle, move those in. So a couple things you want to do though is, yeah, I have this reference image, but you always want to make sure you have like some extra references outside of your software to make sure you're understanding what's going on in the proportions and whatnot. So if I look at here, just a couple really simple images so I could make sure I understood the depth. You can see that we have the tang of the blade, and really how something like this is manufactured for strength is that blade is actually forged with the tang as one piece of metal, and then you basically bolt these two pieces of wood on either side. So we're going to make sure we capture that in our model. So this is a really good for kind of getting the thickness. Now, how thick we make this, we're going to wing it, but you should see if it's too small or too big. Like, you can tell the extremes. Okay, so first let's make the handle, because that's actually really easy. So if we look at, let me pull up the reference. If we look at the reference, you can see we have this nice kind of beveled edge here. So what we're going to do is basically like create this shape right here. So we're going to extrude those faces up and then scale them to get this nice chamfer shape going on. Okay, so let's select these faces, Control E. And if you hit the box, one of them, and then you get this one, and you can scale it in like that. Okay. And I think the back, let me check. It's pretty rounded. So let's grab these two edges and just push them in. And again, we're on a flat surface, so that's nice. But now you can see we can grab these faces that we just extruded and kind of scaled in, and we can move them out. So something like that's pretty good, I'd say, for the thickness of the handle. Or this is the piece of wood on one side of the handle, right? These faces. So I think that's a good start. Now what we're going to do is we're going to want to kind of extrude this way to get the kind of this thickness, the thickness of this metal part going. So something I do know though is I don't want to select this whole border, because then it's making this bladed part fat. So we only want to grab the faces that are going to be kind of flat if you look at it at the top or the bottom, whereas these actually kind of cut in, right? So let's just grab from here. So if I select this edge, hold shift and go over here, double click, hold shift, go over here, double click, and double click. That's how you can kind of control without having to manually select each edge. So I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to make it this thick. Now remember, I don't want to, if I want the edge to ultimately be this thick, I don't want to extrude this much, because we're still only going to model half the knife and then mirror it over. So if I want it to be this thick, I should really only extrude it about here, because it's going to double. Okay? So I think something like that's pretty good. Oops. All right, so now I think we're done with the reference. I'm going to go to my channel box and let's hide this so we can focus on this. And I'm going to toggle the grid off. Oops. In my perspective. So now what I want to do is I'll go to my top view, but let's make this selection first. So yeah, I'm not going to select this edge and this edge because they get kind of weird. But I will select from here to here. Again, I just select this edge, hold shift, double click. And I'll go to my top view. And I want these to come into the middle. And we're going to try to get it as close as possible. But we might have to fix up some things in our mirror. And honestly, uncheck this one and uncheck that one. I think we can make it a little bit thicker, something like that. And if need be, we can always make this a bit bigger. All right. So now you can see we got half of our blade. So we talked a little bit about smoothing groups in class. So here we can actually see where they come in handy. We're getting like this weird artifact, some faceting going on, major faceting right here. So what we can do is we can start playing with the smoothing groups to better control that. So I know this handle, I want to be one smoothing group. So if you hold shift and hit period, that grows the selection. So let's set this to, if we go to mesh display, let's soften these edges. But you can see how it blended them on there. So really what we want to do is we don't want to select all of those. We'll select these edges, these faces, and basically the edges that are connecting or that make up these faces are what's going to be smooth or hardened. So let's go to mesh display, soften edge, and that's getting the result we want. And then we want to select like this ring of edges or this edge loop, and we'll go to mesh display, harden edges. Okay, so now we can see that transition a bit more. Let's select these. So again, I just selected a polygon, select an adjacent one, hold shift, double click the adjacent one, and it does that loop for us. So these ones, I'll soften them. Mesh tool, mesh display, soften. But that gets us the soft result like on the fluke, but it kind of blends this edge on the side. So we need to go back and make sure these edges are hardened. So mesh display, harden edge face. Okay. So I think for something like this, just go through, select these ones, mesh tools, or mesh display, soften. That kind of fix a little bit of that issue. And you might want to dock these. I'm gonna start docking these. What if we do this? And remember, we have in the modeling toolkit, we can use like the drag selection function. Let's do, what if we harden these? I think it's gonna harden between them. Yeah. So let's do soften Might be easier just to soften everything and then come in. Yeah, let's do that. I'm still thinking about smoothing groups in Max, and it's a little bit easier because you just make polygon selections, but really Maya's looking at the edges. So let's smooth the whole thing. Okay, so we get this. Now let's go in and sharpen the edges that we want to sharpen. So I know this one, this one, these ones, and these ones. So all these ones should be sharp. There we go. So that's getting us a nice result. Okay, so we have to mirror this over. So real quick, I'll go to my top view. I will hit D to go to effect pivot mode, hold V so I can snap it to one of these vertices in the middle, and then just hit Q or something to get out of the edit pivot mode. Oops. Oh, I'm in drag. Okay, so I'll just switch this back to pick marquee selection. Okay, and now I will use mirror and make sure the correct axis is there. You can bridge the border so you can see right here, it kind of fixed that thing I had. So yeah, I think these are the settings I have and they work for me. You might need to play with the axis depending on which orientation you start it from. Since I start from the front, I'm rebuilding the information in the Z axis. Yeah, I think that's good. So before we call it good though, I always check this center line. See, I have two edges sitting right on top of each other. So what we could do is just go through vertices and just like make sure these ones, like these two vertices are welded together or whatever. But this is actually easy enough. I can double click, control backspace. And now I should only have one edge, okay? So I want to check here too. So it looks like I got two edges. So let's just control backspace. Oops, maybe not that one, I guess. Actually, this one we might want to merge so we don't have to do repair. So let's select these vertices and let's just do merge. Go in, make sure that merge is actually working, okay? So yeah, so now let's select the bottom blade or angled in part and let's merge. I think, I can't remember if they changed what this looks like in 2019, the merge tool, but I think that is good. Yeah, this looks good. Something I might do differently is just make it so this tries a little bit smaller. Obviously, I would want my reference up. Let's get that up. Yeah, something like that. And then make sure this one's not too. There we go. Is that all I wanted to show? Yeah, I think so. So we don't need it in this example because we're just going to keep it really low poly. But in some of the knives for the homework assignment, there's these holes that are cut out. So if you want to achieve that, you would do it obviously before you mirror it. But what you would do is if I wanted to get this in here, I could select these, I could control E, I could scale them in, And then instead of manually like going in to try to form these to build a circle, and I always think you want at least 8 vertices, especially if the circle is like going to affect the silhouette and we're not going to smooth it like using mesh smooth or anything. You want to make sure there's at least 8 vertices to make up that circle, or you can get away with 6 depending on how like detailed that circle is or how small of a detail it is. But really anything less than 6 is going to be 4, so it's a perfect square and it's not going to look like a circle. So let's select these, and there's a function that will actually make making this into a circle a lot easier. So we can select the vertices, the faces, or the edges that make up what we want to turn into a circle. So if you go to edit mesh circularize, that will create a perfect circle for us, and then we can scale it, right? So then obviously if this was a hole, we can Control E and delete, right? So that's how we can use that tool to kind of make cutting in holes a bit easier. So again, only a couple of the knives on the homework assignment will have that, but I just wanted to reiterate that circularize function. Okay. So yeah, then we would obviously want to go in, name this one like Geo Knife, and put it in its own layer. But yeah, pretty simple. Pretty quick and easy way to get a decent low poly asset. So I think next week what we'll do is we'll look at materials, lighting, and rendering, or not next week, next class. We'll look at materials, lighting, and rendering in Maya using Arnold. Since we're going to focus more on real-time stuff, we're not going to spend too much time in that, but I think it's super helpful to understand the process of like rendering stuff in for production sake, like visualization stuff, just so you guys can get a little bit of taste of that. Okay, so I will see you guys next time.